Hey everybody, it's Jeff Miller. Welcome to the Free Yourself podcast, where we invite you to create space to flourish. And really happy to have my guest, Coach Fred Hoiberg, here today. Coach Hoiberg is the head coach of the Nebraska men's basketball team. He's also widely known for his exceptional leadership, both on and off the court. An incredibly accomplished career all the way around, both as a collegiate star at Iowa State University, 10-year career in the NBA. Incredible contributions both to Indiana Pacers, Chicago Bulls, Minnesota Timberwolves, and an NBA coaching career as well. And even this year, I believe last year, named Coach of the Year. Fred's earned the affectionate name the Mayor for his charismatic presence and his ability to foster deep community connections. What's incredible to me is this transitioning seamlessly between player to executive to coach. He's continuously emphasized teamwork, resilience, and character, and that's why he's an amazing guest for us to have here today, whether guiding athletes to peak performance or supporting personal and professional growth. Coach Hoiberg embodies leadership rooted in integrity, humility, and authentic human connection. Coach, I bounced all over the place, a couple of flat tires, had to change schedules. And you've been incredible with bouncing all over and texting me and being so communicative. And I really appreciate it. It's great to have you here. I know we got a limited amount of time, but I really want to thank you for being with us.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, Jeff, and I'm sorry about your travels. I know it's been a little bit of a crazy ride so far, but it worked out. You know, I was at the Mayo Clinic getting a physical here the last couple of days, and glad we could make this work.
Yeah, thank you so much. So this tour, this is a 10-day motorcycle that I'm doing across the U.S. Today, this is day 6 of the tour right now. And it's been a real mix of people, eclectic mix. I mean, just, the other day I was at the Air Force Academy or podcast with Dr. Kimberly Dickman, who is a positive psychology professor at the Air Force Academy and working with young people over there. And, I really want to jump onto the mayor thing because that intrigued me, and I've known that about you. But here you are working with young people in post-COVID politics, divisiveness, technology, AI on its way. And what is it that you kind of can bring out the mayor in all of these young people to kind of help keep them balanced and find their identity?
Yeah, well, first of all, that nickname was it was given to me by a player. I played college basketball in my hometown. I was actually born in Lincoln, Nebraska. I moved to Ames. My dad got a job at Iowa State University as a sociology professor when I was 2 years old, and was raised in Ames and ended up playing my college basketball there. So one of the teammates that was a senior gave me that nickname, and then once Dick Vitale got a hold of it, I was his PT-peer of the week, and then it kind of went from there. And I had gotten write-in votes in the mayoral election in Ames pretty much ever since. So anyway, that's kind of how that thing started. As far as how to navigate, just today's divisiveness that we have in society. There's a lot of things you try to do every day, and we have a culture day with our team once a week, and we get in there and we generally have a topic. The other thing we try to do with our players is really make them well-rounded people, and we get them out in the community. We were just at a homeless shelter, passing out meals a couple nights ago, and we will do things throughout the summer and then into the fall, and a little bit less once we get involved with our season and the craziness with the travel and the academics and everything that they have going for them. But we really try to do all we can, to help them navigate, this whole situation that we're in right now. There's so many things that these guys have to navigate over the course of the year. And, social media, I said this when it first started, I think it's going to be the end of all of us when it's all said and done. It's so toxic. Certainly there's some good sites out there and some positivity, but for the most part, it's very negative, especially when you're a public figure, whether you're a player or coach or, whatever it is, front office executive. There's so much, 50% of the people a lot of times love you and 50% hate you. And, I think that goes back to the politics and the divisiveness that we have in politics in our country, and around the world right now. But, for our guys, we just try to do everything we can to educate them. And, a lot of it is with the culture day that we have. You talk to them about, listen, these kids are so glued to their device now, and, they always have that phone with them. And, if a lot of them after games and you're going through a tough stretch, we had a couple of them last year, they go through and see what people are saying about them. You can't do that because it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. And you really just have to worry about the people that you care about and in your inner circle and the people that are there and have your best interests. You can't worry about all the outside noise that unfortunately happens, especially when you're a student athlete.
Yeah. 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 It's amazing. You talked about these guys being all around people, all around human beings. And, it is very easy for us to be compartmentalized. I mean, the gadget immediately allows us to compartmentalize basketball, our friend, their friend group, all of that stuff, allows us to do that. But it seems that, the having the balance, both the spiritual balance, mental wellness, physical well-being, all of that really is integral for the healthiest players and for the most all-around wellness.
Yeah, and we try to do that with our guys. We have a mindfulness program that we have that our strength coach actually runs. He's a fascinating guy. He spent a lot of time in the NBA, and he's really brought a lot of things outside of strength and conditioning, and most to do with the mind that he
Yeah.
does with our guys. And we've already started that with our players this summer as we get 8 weeks with our guys, over the course of the next couple months. And, the other thing is we have a sports psychiatry department that our guys have full access to. And, we have sports scientists, we have, athletic trainer, and the thing, we're all in unison. We try not to give mixed messages to these players. But it's very important with, the mindfulness and try to keep these guys mentally strong. That to me is, one of the biggest things that these kids have to navigate. Maybe it wasn't quite as big an issue back when I was playing, back in the 90s and early 2000s because social media wasn't around at that time. So there's so many more things now, that I think that really disrupt these kids from a mental standpoint. Just to try to be there and help them through all that is very important. And again, if you send mixed signals and mixed messages, that's only going to create confusion. So we just try to make sure that we're linear, with our message and everything that we're talking to these guys about. And, I think that has helped our players, navigate some tough times.
It's amazing. I mean, I would think, and certainly even just looking at your career but I mean, there's a lot of ups and downs that comes with it, both on the collegiate level, on in the NBA as a coach. Then you have to add in everything else that they walk in with that you didn't have with that. I mean, do you kind of see that even with everything that they've got going on, they can be isolated, they can be lonely, because we find that a lot with a lot of young people right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, when you're an athlete, you're going to go through a lot of highs, a lot of lows. I certainly went through a lot of slumps and had some tough days. I was very fortunate. I had a family to help me through that, especially when I got into the NBA. My wife and I, we'd been dating, going all the way back to high school.
Wow.
And, she and we started having kids pretty much right away after we got married, my second year in the NBA. So to have, a family when you're going through those tough times to help you with that, was great. And, like I said, back then you didn't have to worry about, I'm sure people were saying a lot of negative things, but it wasn't out there for the whole world to see on social media. So, now, there's talk shows and, all these things. And now the kids, can make money. So they're almost a lot of times considered are treated as a professional athlete is treated. And and some of these kids are 18 years old, so it is hard for them, but it's just the times that we're living in, with everything that we've got going right now. So it is. I think just having a support system, and that's what we try to do as good a job as we can. And the other thing that I always felt is, when things were going high, you're going to go through a lot of peaks and valleys. When I was on one of those highs, I didn't need somebody to tell me I was playing well. I knew it. I needed somebody to
Yeah.
help me through tough times and,
Yeah.
navigate me through that. And some coaches are really good at it, and some just kind of push you to the side when you're not playing well. So, that to us is, really how you determine the outcome of a player is how you're going to help them through those tough times and get them through those valleys and get them back on the upslope.
You so I wanted to make sure that I didn't forget this, but you said you're back in Lincoln now, and that's where you're from, and Lincoln's been named, I think, more than once, but recently as well, one of the top 10 happiest cities in the United States. And the coach isn't always there for the players, and sometimes the tough times aren't coming through basketball or through sport, right? It's coming through family or loss or any of that other thing. What is it that, I mean, and maybe, just hear what you have to say. What is it about Lincoln that makes it a happy place? You've had your family, but what is the sense of community, and how do your players fit into that community?
Yeah, it's a very unique place, I would say. I think it's about as positive as a place can be in today's climate. Certainly you have your outliers, but for the most part, this is a very supportive community. And the other uniqueness of our state is, there's no pro sports here, and
Mm,
everything revolves around the university.
mm,
So, and we talk to our guys about this all the time. There's a responsibility that comes with that. And, again, we try to get our guys out in the community and try to be a good example and to be a role model, because a lot of people are looking up to these kids, whatever sport it is.
yeah.
And, you look across the board. I mean, our football stadium has been sold out since 1962. The volleyball team, that's the hardest ticket in town. They had a game where they played in Memorial Stadium, the football stadium, that had over 92,000 people. Softball, baseball, the support across the board, every sport, wrestling,
Wow.
it's unbelievable. So, I think our guys feel that. And again, the
Yeah.
responsibility for them to try to be out there and, be a good person, I think resonates well. And to play with, Midwest values and Nebraska values of, being a hardest working team, diving on the floor, that resonates very well, with the people in this state and especially in this community.
That's so cool. I did not know that. Um, you know, uh, One of the things that that this whole kind of tour and is about belonging, is about personal narratives, is about identity. Um, how do any of those stand out as key elements that you use in working with these guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of them. Certainly adversity. That's another thing. Battling through that, yeah, getting through those tough times. But having an identity obviously is very important in this game as a team and as an individual. Another thing we do here is, we'll have our guys come in individually with our entire support staff. So with the sports psychiatrist, with our sports scientist, with our trainer, with our strength and conditioning coach, and with the entire coaching staff. And we make them write down and talk about their goals in front of us,
Mm,
and individual goals, team goals. And then it's our job, and we tell them when they walk in the room, our job is to help you stay on track to accomplish these goals. And we found that to be very beneficial. And I actually stole that from John Cook, who's one of the most successful volleyball coaches of all time. He just retired this last year after winning, 5 national championships at the University of Nebraska. So, just again, trying to be there for them and keep them on track when they get off, and to hold them accountable for when they do that. And again, the team goals, and then we talk about that as a group. Talking to our guys about the importance of spending time with each other off the court. If you have off court chemistry, a lot of times that equates to on court chemistry, which you have to have, or you have no chance to win games on a consistent level. So we try to do a lot of things to keep them on message and on point, and hopefully we do a good job of that.
what about bringing that out into the community? I mean, obviously, I mean, our human flourishing. You guys obviously have a level of flourishing that's happening from teamwork and individually. It seems that when these guys walk into the room, there is a sense of, even if they don't quite know it yet, there's a sense of they already belong. There's no, whether they accept it or not, they belong. They matter. Their story matters, and all of that matters. How does I mean, for us, everybody in the community matters. Everybody's story matters. It doesn't mean that their story is going to be on the front page of the newspaper or that Scorsese is going to be doing a movie about them, but the value that every single person, uh, everybody touches somebody somehow in this time. Is that something that you guys are able to communicate, or that just happens naturally?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great point, Jeff. I do think everybody has value, and some I think ooze it maybe more with confidence than others, and they think that their value might be if they're on the court and playing a major role on a team. But everybody's going to have value. One of my favorite players I ever coached just graduated last year, and he was a guy that got in the game if we were up or down by 25 points, but he still had a tremendous value on our basketball team and on our culture. And he's, one of the kids that I'll always be extremely grateful for because of what he did, even though he wasn't the guy out there, making the free throw at the end of the game or making a big 3-pointer or getting a defensive stop. But still, his voice was always there in practice, and he would help guys in games, even though he didn't have a major role on the court, with their team as far as his role is concerned. And that's the other thing in team sport is role acceptance. And you're going to have a lot of guys that have different roles, and it might not be the role that you envisioned. But if you embrace it and thrive in it, you're going to be successful, and ultimately you're going to move up, and your roles potentially going to change. And we talk about that all the time. But I think it's the same. Sport I think is a great example for really everybody, because you have to have the teamwork, you have to have the chemistry, you have to fight through tough times, and you have to go out there and do it together. And I don't care if it's a business or what else it is, but you have to have those same values and standards and qualities if you're going to have a successful business.
Yeah, yeah. My son played Division 1 water polo, and and he was a goalie, and so that 3 second rule of he had 3 seconds to be upset about a goal getting in, but then that was it. Moving on. So, and I always was really impressed with that notion of there's room to kind of uh, here it is, and now you got to get on with it and everything like that. Role acceptance, I'm going to steal that from you because it feels like that applies on so many levels, as a son, as a brother, as a husband, as a father, as a neighbor, as a it seems like there's so many possibilities to that, dimensions, as an employee, as an employer, as a business partner. That role acceptance means really that the magic happens once you're able to own that.
Yeah, and I think communicating that role is very important as well. And believe me, I had roles on teams where maybe it wasn't the role that I envisioned or wanted, but as long as it was communicated to me, I accepted it. I think when it's not communicated, that's where you have confusion, and that's where that's going to create issues within your team. And if you as long as it's communicated, that was always what was fair to me. If a coach said to me, "Listen, this guy's going to play above you. You're not in the rotation right now, but keep yourself ready when your name's called." And listen, you accepted it. And for me, the time always came. Something was going to happen over the course of a long season. There's going to be an injury. There was going to be foul trouble. There was going to be something where maybe a guy wasn't performing up to the level where you had to come in and listen. When that time comes, you better be ready to make an impact, or your role is never going to increase. So I always found that, again, using the example of sport, of being ready when your name's called because of that role, potentially changing. And that happened to me. I went from a guy that wasn't playing at all to getting a chance, and now all of a sudden I'm in the rotation and playing a major role and a key role on a team.
And being number one three-pointer in the NBA.
Well, that was a fun year. It was, listen, we came off of one of the best seasons in Minnesota Timberwolves history, and it was an unbelievable team to play for. And you talk about a team that had chemistry. Kevin Garnett was the MVP. Sam Cassell was an all-star. Latrell Sprewell, we knew, was going to have a major role. Wally Zerbiak, and the rest of us were pretty much role players on
Yeah.
those teams. But if we were within a couple possessions late in the game, we were going to find a way to win that game, and we knew it. And the next year, actually the year that I did lead the NBA in 3-point shooting, was a year we just didn't quite have that same chemistry. We went through a coaching change, and we didn't make the playoffs that year after losing to the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals, and that was with Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant and Gary Payton and Karl Malone. I mean, it was really kind of the first super team that was put together, and Sam Cassell didn't play in that series. I think we would have won a championship that year, and we kept the team together, but we just didn't have that same chemistry that next season. The crazy thing about my career is how it took a turn after that last year when I had my best year as a pro. Is I found out after that season that I had a heart condition that required open heart surgery, and that's what ended my playing career. And that was the biggest adversity that I'd probably faced, not only in my career but in my life. And to battle through that, and to still be the best father that I could. We had a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and 2-year-old, and twins that were toddlers, and it was a very difficult time, but found a way to get through it, and then managed to get a career into coaching. But playing was to live out a 10-year dream of playing at the highest level was an incredible experience for me, and unfortunately it ended before I was ready. But I tried to handle the adversity the best I could and lean on my support system, and moved on into a coaching career.
And I mean, just to even hear you kind of talk about that, just gives me chills. I mean, to just to hear the names and hear what was happening, and remembering that and all, it is really at the highest level. Um, what is it that you kind of find um, that fills that? I don't want to say void, but that you've transcended to be able to appreciate other things in life that have bring that kind of value to you.
Well, I'll say this. Like I said, it was very hard for me to accept at first that I was going to have to undergo this procedure, and I fully planned on playing after I got, basically it was an aortic aneurysm that I had. So I got the diseased tissue, it was fixed, and then, fully planned on after, my sternum healed from being opened up, and if everything went well, then I was going to resume my career. I had a complication. I developed 100% heart block during the procedure, and had to get a pacemaker, which still to this day I'm 100% paced. 10
Wow.
years later, I had a valve replacement surgery. But I guess the initial when I really wanted to go out on my own terms. I wanted to, as a competitor, as somebody that was really coming into his own. I wanted to go out on my own, so I got myself back in shape to play in an NBA game, which is not easy to do.
Yeah.
Especially after the procedure that I had. And I took a couple visits, and I pretty much agreed to play for the Phoenix Suns. And our team doctor stepped in, and he said, "You know what? I don't think there's much risk, but I can't guarantee there's none." And that's really what I was, waiting for, is for somebody to give me that reason. And then I moved into the next phase. And at first, it was in the front office. And in a front office, you really help try to orchestrate and put together a team, and draft, hopefully players that can stick in your organization, and fit the culture of the organization. But I really miss being on the floor, and that's how I got into coaching. Is I wanted to get back into a locker room. I just missed it. I missed being out there. I missed the practices, and obviously being on the other side of it. From a coaching perspective. But I really wanted to get back out there, and that's where I was very fortunate. I started at my alma mater at Iowa State. Had a stint in the NBA with the Bulls, and going into year 7 now at Nebraska. So it's I love it. I love being back out there. I miss playing every day. I really do.
Sure.
I'd love to be back out there between the lines, but things happen, and I think everything happens for a reason. And I'm enjoying this next phase of my life.
Oh, well done. Well done. I did want to ask you about rituals, and I kind of use that in the most loose way, whether it's extremely spiritual, or whether it's sport, or whether it's family related or community related. What's the significance for rituals for you?
Well, you're looking at a guy that was as superstitious as anybody when I played, and I tried not to be, because it kind of drives you nuts maybe when things aren't going the right way. But it is important in some regard, to have those standards in your life, and to have your rituals, and to have your absolutes that you're going to do on a daily basis, whether it's meditation, certainly your faith. What you're going to do, as far as your routine. I tried to do the same routine every day as a player. When I was out there, I did the same shooting routine almost every day, certainly on game days. So I think it is important to get into a routine, to have that. And there's a lot of things in your life that you have that with. But if you have too many of them, I think you can drive yourself nuts.
Yeah.
And, it can potentially go the other way. But, I certainly am a big believer, that you have to have your absolutes that you do, whether it's every day or every week or whatever it is, the frequency. But, I do think that's important.
Yeah. I would say right now, I'm going to just make, I'm saying to the man who's sitting in the happiest town, where I'll be tonight. Actually, I'm overnighting there, but one of the 10 happiest towns in the U.S. People are under duress. People are stressed. People are afraid. People are angry. Um, uh, um, People are lonely. Um, what are some of the steps that we as individuals and as teams and as community members, what is a single thing or a couple of things or steps that we all might take to just start moving back toward reconnecting again?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jeff. I think it's little things. I mean, I think that's where you start with it. I think we need to be better to each other across the board, whatever your beliefs are. I still think, there's a place where we can all be civil and, be kind of say hello to people, open a door for somebody. Just little things like that. And, I just experienced, listen, we were up, my wife and I went out for a walk after all my appointments at the Mayo Clinic yesterday, and just a lot of times you walk by people and they're on the phone or they're looking at their phone. They don't even look. You don't even look at each other anymore. I tried to say hello to everybody we walked by. Some were great, and some just didn't even say anything. So I think that's part of it is just trying to be a good person and doing something for somebody. I think if you can make somebody's day. It might be somebody that hadn't been talked to in a while. Just to spend that little bit of time with them. To hopefully make their day.
Yeah. Listen, first of all, I'm just so grateful to you for jumping in. I want to leave with this one thing that my business partner at my production company, George Meeker, sent me. He knows I'm a huge Rick Rubin fan. Rick Rubin, the music producer, and he sent over a thing about Rick that Rick did on his Instagram about AI, and he said that and this really made me think of you and the team and what you're and with the guys. But he's and I'm paraphrasing Rick Rubin, so forgive me. But he said that the Wright brothers uh, back like AI could never have discovered flight, right? Because the technology didn't exist back then. So the Wright brothers they basically went after what was impossible, and AI is based on logic, you know, and thinking, when you're in working with a team like this, and that there has to be an essence of what's not possible, or that it's impossible, and that you go beyond that, that you throw logic out the window, and that's where we actually can elevate our purpose, our existence, our relationships. At least that was my takeaway on that. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, yeah, a great question, and it's going to be interesting to see what AI does to our society, and does it something. It scares. To be honest with you, Jeff, scares the hell out of me. And I guess I would give you this example. I kind of used this phrase with my team a couple years ago. We had two starters, two of the best players that we had, and we were really really good team. We had a top 20 defense in the country at the time, and we had a really good record. And I had two starters go out with season-ending injuries. I had one with a shoulder injury and one with a knee injury, and they were out for the year. And when you lose, 40% of your starting lineup like that, that's a tough thing to bounce back from. And we lost several in a row. And as we got going, we won a couple, and people were talking about this team's done and everything. And I said, guys, why not us? Let's keep this thing going. We ended up with the best record in the Big Ten in the month of February and March, and finished off really strong and really kind of flipped the narrative on this program. And then the next year made the NCAA tournament. And then this year we won, a postseason tournament in Las Vegas, the inaugural Crown tournament. So, I just think, again, I always, I know I've talked about this a lot, but, the adversity is going to hit you, and, you see how you bounce back. And sometimes it's a phrase, that may change things for you. And that's kind of what we used, that year, and it's been pretty good since.
Coach, I'm going to leave it on that note. That's so good, man. Really, really appreciate it. Thanks again for taking the time, and look forward to meeting in person soon. And listen, here's to a great summer and a great season for you as well, and your players. And thanks for sharing this with everyone. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Jeff. Really cool what you're doing, and wish you all the best on your travels.
Thanks so much, Coach. Take care.